Hey everyone, I'm Mike. Before I jump in, do me a solid and hit that like button. Trust me, this story is a ride, and you don't want to miss any of it. So, let's roll back the clock to when I was about 6. Back then, life felt pretty chill. I lived in this big house with my mom. My dad had passed away when I was just a baby, so it was just the two of us. He left me a fat inheritance, but being 6, I didn't really get what that meant. I just knew my mom always seemed to have money and lived comfortably. Anyway, one day, out of nowhere, my mom sits me down. Mike, honey, I have to go on a business trip. It's really important, okay? You're going to stay with Uncle Rick for a while. Now, at that age, I wasn't thinking too deep into it. Uncle Rick was the fun uncle, the one who let me watch movies I probably shouldn't have been watching and bought me candy whenever my mom said no. So in my head, I was like, sweet, this is going to be awesome. She hugged me goodbye, and I remember thinking it'd just be for a few days, maybe a week. I waved her off, smiling, not realizing that'd be the last time I'd see her for a long time. Uncle Rick picked me up, and the first few days were great. We ate pizza, stayed up late watching movies, and he even let me play his old video games. It was like this mini vacation, and I didn't have a care in the world. But then things started to change. Days turned into weeks. I'd ask Uncle Rick when my mom was coming back, and he'd just brush it off. Soon, kiddo. Soon, he'd say with this kind of tired look in his eyes, like he wasn't so sure himself. Weeks turned into months, and that's when I really started to feel it. I'd see other kids at school getting picked up by their parents, and I'd be waiting for Uncle Rick, wondering why it wasn't my mom. I remember one time I asked him again, when's mom coming back? And that's when he snapped. It was the first time I ever saw him mad. Your mom's not coming back, kid, he said all gruff. She left you with me, so stop asking. I didn't understand what he meant at the time, but it hurt. I felt this tight knot in my stomach. Why would my mom leave me? What did I do wrong? Living with Uncle Rick went from fun to a nightmare. He started getting annoyed with me over everything. If I left my toys out, he'd yell. If I asked him for help with my homework, he'd sigh like I was the biggest inconvenience ever. He'd say stuff like, I didn't sign up to babysit some kid, and your mom just dumped you on me. I started to hide out in my room more. I didn't want to make him mad, so I just stayed out of his way. My room became my safe space. I had this small radio I'd listen to, and I'd just draw pictures for hours. It was the only thing that distracted me from everything else going on. Sometimes I'd try to pretend my mom was just late, that any day now she'd walk through the door and say, surprise, I'm back. But as weeks turned into months, that hope started to fade. There was this one night that really sticks out. I had this stuffed bear my mom gave me, one of those old, worn-out ones with a missing eye. I hugged it close, crying quietly, hoping Uncle Rick wouldn't hear me. I didn't want him to call me a crybaby or tell me to toughen up, but in that moment, I felt so alone. It was like everything I thought I knew about my life just crumbled. It's weird to think a 6-year-old could feel that way, but I did. Things just kept getting worse from there. Uncle Rick's attitude went from annoyed to straight up mean. He'd make comments about how I was eating too much or how I was costing him money. I was just a kid, so I didn't really understand how money worked, but I got the message. I was a burden. I started eating less, even when I was hungry, and tried to keep my room as clean as possible just to avoid any more yelling. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. He'd still get mad, slam doors, and sometimes just leave for hours. I'd be alone, sitting in that big quiet house, wondering where my mom was. Was she thinking about me? Did she miss me at all? I remember one time I found this old family photo album in one of the closets. There were pictures of me as a baby, pictures of my mom smiling and holding me, and even some of my dad. It made me feel, I don't know, like I was seeing a life I didn't remember. I flipped through it, hoping for some kind of clue, some hint about why she left. But all I saw were smiles and happy moments. It didn't make sense. How could someone just walk away from all that? Eventually, I stopped asking about her. I figured if she really cared, she'd be back by now. But she wasn't, so what was the point in holding on to false hope? I decided I had to take care of myself because no one else would. I buried myself in schoolwork. I figured if I couldn't control what was happening at home, I could at least control my grades. I became the quiet kid at school, head down, just doing my work. Teachers started noticing, saying I was gifted and that I had a lot of potential. I didn't care about all that. I just wanted to keep my head down and survive. But sometimes, even when I was trying to focus, I'd see other kids playing with their parents, laughing, and it'd hit me all over again. I'd wonder, what did I do wrong? Why wasn't I good enough? I didn't have answers, but the questions kept me up at night. It wasn't until years later that I realized those questions wouldn't ever go away. They just became a part of me, like this shadow I couldn't shake. It's tough when you're a kid, you know? You don't know how to make sense of stuff like that. All you know is what you feel, and I felt abandoned. Looking back now, I get why I buried myself in school. It was the one thing I could control. It felt like if I could ace my classes, if I could prove I was smart, maybe, just maybe, my mom would come back and be proud of me. Maybe she'd realize what she missed out on. But as time went on, that hope got smaller and smaller. And before I knew it, I was just surviving, getting through each day one at a time, trying to figure out how to make it on my own. So I'm about 14 when this all went down. By this point, I'm used to keeping my head down, focusing on school, and avoiding any trouble at home. I mean, school was my escape. It was the one place I could feel like I had some control, and the teachers actually seemed to like me. I kept to myself mostly, didn't really have any close friends. It was easier that way, you know? No one asking too many questions. But then came this group project. Teachers love throwing these at us like they don't realize how much it sucks to get stuck with random people. Anyway, I get paired with Lisa. She was one of those people who seemed to have it all together. Always smiling, always hanging with a big group of friends. We didn't talk much before that, but suddenly, we're partners, and I'm thinking, great, she's gonna think I'm a total weirdo. The first time we met up to work on the project, I was all awkward and quiet, but she didn't seem to care. She just chatted away like we'd known each other for years. After a while, I started to loosen up, and we actually got along pretty well. Turns out she was pretty chill and didn't have that stuck-up attitude I expected. Then one day, she asks me if I want to come over to her place to work on the project. I hesitated because honestly, going to other people's houses always felt weird to me. But Lisa was persistent. Walking into her house felt like stepping into a whole different world. I mean, her family was the total opposite of what I was used to. Her mom welcomed me with this big smile, like I was a part of their family already. "Hey Mike, you hungry? I made snacks." She said it so casually, like it was no big deal. But to me, it was. I couldn't even remember the last time anyone asked me if I was hungry, let alone made me anything. And her dad, man, he was something else. He actually sat down and asked me about school, my interests, all that stuff. "So Mike, what do you like to do when you're not buried in books?" he'd asked, genuinely interested. It caught me off guard. I mean, no one ever really asked me stuff like that. I mumbled some answers, feeling shy and a bit out of place, but they made me feel welcome, like I wasn't some outsider intruding on their lives. Lisa's little brother even came over and showed me his video game collection, insisting we play together. It was such a simple thing, but it meant a lot to me. I realized I had been missing out on all these small moments that other kids probably took for granted. Sitting there, eating homemade cookies and playing video games, it felt like what I imagined a real family was supposed to be like. After that, Lisa and I started hanging out more, even outside of the project. She'd invite me over, and every time, her family treated me the same, like I was welcome there. Her mom would always say, "Mike, you're part of the family now. You don't need an invite. Just come over anytime." I'd smile and nod, but inside, it was like this warm feeling, like someone actually cared. I tried not to get too attached, though. I mean, it wasn't my family. It was Lisa's. And part of me was scared that if I let myself enjoy it too much, it would all just disappear, like everything else in my life. But Lisa didn't let me pull away. She'd always be like, "Hey, you're coming over after school, right?" And I couldn't say no. She became my best friend, and her family became this safe place I could go to when things with Uncle Rick got too rough. There was this one day when everything felt different. I had a rough night before. Uncle Rick had gone off on me because I left the light on, and he kept saying stuff like, "You're nothing but trouble. Why couldn't your mom take you with her?" That hit me hard, and I went to school feeling pretty low. I must have looked miserable because Lisa pulled me aside and asked if I was okay. I tried to brush it off, saying I was just tired, but she wasn't buying it. "Mike, you know you can talk to me, right? Whatever's going on, I'm here for you." The way she said it, I could tell she actually meant it. So for the first time, I opened up a little. I didn't spill everything, but I told her enough. How my mom left, how Uncle Rick wasn't exactly thrilled about taking care of me. Lisa listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she just put her hand on my shoulder and said, "Your mom's missing out. You're a great person, and if she can't see that, then that's her loss." It was such a simple thing to say, but it felt like a weight lifted off me. No one had ever said anything like that before. From that point on, Lisa's house felt like a second home. Her parents would always ask how my day was, and her mom would make these dinners that were better than anything I'd ever had at Uncle Rick's. It was like stepping into another universe. Every time I walked through their front door, I felt safe there, like I could finally relax and just be a kid for a while. But of course, the more time I spent there, the more I noticed just how different my life was. It was hard not to compare. I'd see how Lisa's family interacted, how they joked around, how her parents actually listened to her and supported her, and I'd realize how much I missed out on. I remember thinking, why couldn't my mom be like this? Why did she have to leave? But I kept those thoughts to myself. The last thing I wanted was to seem jealous or ungrateful when they were being so kind to me. I knew I couldn't stay at Lisa's forever, though. Every time I'd leave her house, it was like going back to reality. I'd walk home, dreading whatever mood Uncle Rick might be in. Sometimes he wouldn't even be there. He'd be out late doing who knows what. And when he was home, it was like walking on eggshells, trying not to set him off. I started spending more and more time at Lisa's. Her parents didn't seem to mind. If anything, they encouraged it. "Mike, you don't need to ask. Just come by any time you want," her dad would say, giving me this reassuring smile. And I wanted to believe them, but part of me kept waiting for the day they'd get tired of having me around. I mean, why would they want to deal with someone else's kid when they had their own family? But that day never came. In fact, they seemed to go out of their way to make me feel included. One weekend, They even took me along on this family picnic. Lisa's mom packed this huge basket of food, and we all went to this park. It was one of those perfect days where everything just felt right. For a few hours, I forgot about all the stuff going on at home. I laughed, played soccer with Lisa's little brother, and for a moment, I felt like I belonged. That feeling of belonging was something I hadn't felt in years, and honestly, I started craving it. Lisa's family showed me what life could be like if you had people who genuinely cared about you. It gave me this tiny flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. But I knew better than to hold on to hope too tightly. Life had already shown me how quickly things could change, and that's where things stood. I had this second family that I cherished, but deep down, I still felt like an outsider. I was grateful, but there was always this voice in my head reminding me not to get too comfortable. After all, good things didn't usually stick around in my life for long. So I'm 17 at this point, almost done with high school, and still spending a lot of time at Lisa's. I'd gotten used to things being a certain way. My routine was solid. School, Lisa's, home, repeat. But then, out of nowhere, Uncle Rick hits me with some news that stopped me in my tracks. I remember it clearly. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was in my room doing some homework when I heard him yelling from the living room. "Mike, get out here," he shouted. I froze for a second, not sure what to expect. When he called like that, it usually wasn't for anything good, but I dragged myself out there, trying to stay calm. I walk in, and there he is, standing by the door, looking annoyed as usual. "Your mother's back," he says like he's announcing the weather or something. My heart practically stopped. My mom, after all these years? It didn't feel real. I just stared at him, waiting for him to say it was a joke, but he didn't. "She's outside," he added, sounding fed up. "Go talk to her." I didn't know what to think. Part of me wanted to run out the door, hug her, and ask where she'd been. But the other part of me was pissed. Like, after all this time, she just shows up like nothing happened. My hands were shaking as I walked out, and when I saw her, it was like I was looking at a stranger. She looked different. I mean, it had been almost 10 years, so of course she did. But still, it was weird seeing her again. She had this guy with her. Jack. He had this big grin plastered on his face, like he was trying way too hard. I remember thinking, who the hell is this guy? "Mike, sweetie," my mom said, all teary-eyed like we were in some kind of reunion movie. "I've missed you so much." She pulled me into this awkward hug, and I stood there stiff. I didn't hug her back. I mean, what was I supposed to do? Act like everything was fine, like she hadn't just vanished for nearly a decade? When she let go, she introduced me to Jack. "This is my husband," she said, like that was supposed to mean something to me. Jack reached out to shake my hand, and I did it, but I kept my guard up. He had this smile that was too wide, and I felt this gut feeling that something was off. "Hey there, bud. We've heard so much about you," he said, sounding way too friendly. My mom started going on about how she had to work through some personal issues, and that's why she was gone for so long. I just nodded, feeling numb. Personal issues was supposed to explain everything? That's what she was going with? It didn't add up, but I wasn't about to cause a scene, so I played along, nodded some more, told her it was good to see her. But inside it was like this storm was brewing. I felt angry, confused, and honestly, hurt. After a few awkward minutes, they asked if they could come in, and I stepped aside, letting them into the house. Uncle Rick was nowhere to be seen. Typical. He probably didn't want to deal with the drama, and I couldn't really blame him for that. We all sat down in the living room, and my mom started talking about wanting to make things right, about how she regrets everything, about how she wants us to be a family again. Jack jumped in, nodding and saying, "We want to be here for you, Mike. We're a family now." It all felt so fake, like they'd rehearsed this speech before coming over. I kept my answers short, playing along, but my mind was racing. I mean, why now? Why show up after all these years? And who was this Jack guy? Really? Something wasn't sitting right with me. But I didn't know what to say or how to react. I wasn't a kid anymore. I wasn't going to get all emotional and start crying. I'd learned to keep my guard up. After that day, they started showing up more often. My mom would drop by with homemade meals, spaghetti, casseroles, you name it. Jack tried to get all buddy-buddy, offering to teach me how to build stuff like a real man. I played along, figuring it was easier than fighting back, but every time they left, I'd sit in my room, staring at the wall, trying to make sense of it all. Lisa was the only person I could talk to about it. When I told her my mom was back, she looked surprised, but not exactly happy. "Are you sure this is a good thing?" she asked. I shrugged. "I don't know. I mean, she's my mom." Lisa sighed, like she wasn't convinced. "I just don't want to see you get hurt again." I appreciated her looking out for me, but I didn't know what to do. I wanted to believe my mom. I wanted to believe she was really trying to fix things, but the truth was, there was this part of me that didn't trust it. Maybe it was from everything I'd been through, or the fact that she'd been gone so long. Whatever it was, I just couldn't shake this feeling that something wasn't right. One day, my mom showed up with this gift, a fancy watch. "I know I missed so many birthdays, so I wanted to give you something special," she said, her eyes getting all misty. I looked at the watch, all shiny and expensive looking, and I didn't know what to say. Part of me was touched, like maybe she really was trying to make up for lost time, but another part of me felt weird accepting it. Lisa's words were stuck in my head. She'd warned me about them showering me with gifts, and now it was happening. I wanted to believe my mom had changed. But the way she and Jack were acting, it just felt off. Like, why try so hard to make everything seem perfect all of a sudden? One evening, when Lisa and I were hanging out, she brought it up again. Mike, I know you want to believe they've changed, but doesn't this all seem too sudden? She asked. I got defensive, like I always do when I don't want to admit something's bothering me. They're just trying to make up for lost time, Lisa. What's wrong with that? She sighed and looked at me, all serious. I don't trust Jack. The way he talks, the way he acts, I just get this bad vibe. I rolled my eyes, trying to brush it off. You're imagining things, they're just trying to be a family. But her words kept bugging me. I tried to push it out of my head, but there was this nagging feeling I couldn't shake. I started paying more attention after that. Little things started standing out, like how Jack always seemed to steer the conversation toward money. He'd say stuff like, "So Mike, you've got a bright future ahead. Any plans for college?" But the way he said it felt more like fishing for info than friendly chit-chat. And my mom, she'd get all fidgety whenever I mentioned my dad's inheritance. I could tell she didn't want to talk about it, which just made me more suspicious. But I kept playing along, pretending everything was fine. I needed time to figure things out. I knew something was up, but I didn't have proof yet. And until I did, I wasn't going to jump to conclusions. I wasn't a kid anymore. I'd learned to keep my guard up. But deep down, I knew one thing. I couldn't trust them. Not yet. And that feeling, that gut instinct, was about to lead me somewhere I never expected. So I'm doing my usual routine. School. Hanging out with Lisa. Avoiding Uncle Rick's mood swings. And things seem okay on the surface. But now, every time my mom and Jack come over, I'm paying attention to every little thing. I noticed how Jack always found a way to bring up money, like he was trying to figure out how much I knew. My mom would keep quiet when he did, just nodding along. It was starting to become clear that whatever they were up to, it wasn't just about reconnecting. Then one night, everything changed. I was in the kitchen grabbing a snack when I heard them talking in the living room. I was about to walk in when something about their voices made me stop. They weren't laughing or chatting like usual. They were whispering, and it didn't sound friendly. I stayed hidden around the corner, listening closely. Jack's voice was low, but he sounded frustrated. "We need to get that money, Cla. You said it'd be easy." My heart started racing. "Money? What money?" My mom responded, sounding stressed. "I'm trying, but Mike's not as clueless as you think. We can't just come out and ask for it." I felt like the floor was disappearing beneath me. So that was it. This whole reunion, all the visits, the gifts, they were trying to get my dad's inheritance. I leaned back against the wall, feeling this mix of anger and hurt. I kind of suspected it, but hearing them actually talk about it like that, like I was some pawn in their plan, hit me harder than I expected. It was like everything I feared was true. They didn't come back because they cared about me. They came back because they wanted what was mine. I quietly went back to my room, my mind racing. I felt stupid, like I should have seen it coming sooner. Lisa had warned me, and I didn't want to believe her, but she was right all along. I was just too desperate to have a family again that I ignored all the signs. But that night, as I lay there staring at the ceiling, I made up my mind. If they thought I was just some dumb kid who'd hand over my inheritance, they were in for a surprise. The next day at school, I couldn't concentrate on anything. I kept replaying their conversation over and over in my head. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what. During lunch, I found Lisa and told her everything I overheard. She looked at me, her eyes wide. "Mike, I knew something was up, but that's worse than I thought." She didn't hesitate for a second. "We need to find out more. If they're really after your money, we need proof." I nodded, feeling grateful that she was always by my side. We came up with a plan. Every time I was around my mom and Jack, I'd try to record our conversations. I figured if I could catch them saying something on tape, I'd have something to use against them if they tried to pull anything. That weekend, my mom and Jack invited me out for lunch, saying they wanted to spend some quality time together. Normally, I would have said no, but this time, I saw it as an opportunity. I hid my phone in my pocket with the recorder on, making sure it was angled just right so it could pick up everything they said. We were sitting at the restaurant, and they were putting on their usual show, smiling, asking about school, pretending like they cared about my life. But then Jack started steering the conversation toward college. "So Mike, have you thought about what you'll do after high school? College is expensive, you know, but I bet you're all set with your dad's inheritance, right?" I tried to act casual, shrugging like I didn't really know. "I haven't thought much about it," I lied. Jack leaned in a bit, lowering his voice like he was sharing some big secret. "Well, your mom and I have been thinking. We know it's a lot to handle on your own, and we just want to make sure you're making the right decisions." I stayed quiet, letting him talk. He was doing that thing where he pretended to be concerned, but I knew better now. "We could help you manage it, just temporarily. Make sure it's invested properly. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing." I almost laughed at how obvious he was being, but I kept a straight face. "I'll think about it," I said, playing dumb. Inside, I was fuming. It was so clear now. Everything they were doing was just to get to my money. Later, I showed the recording to Lisa. "See, they're trying to get their hands on it," I said, my voice shaking with anger. She nodded, her face serious. "We need more. One recording might not be enough. If they deny it, you need to get them talking again. And this time, make sure they admit what they're really planning. I started watching their every move. The next time they came over, I acted like I was finally warming up to them. I let them talk about family, how they wanted to make things right. It was hard to fake it, especially when all I felt was anger, but I knew I had to play the long game. Jack seemed to fall for it. He got more comfortable talking about their struggles, how they'd been through some tough times. He mentioned bad investments, money troubles, and how they needed help. I pretended to feel sorry for them, nodding along like I was considering helping out. Finally, Jack went for it. You know, Mike, we've done everything we can, but we're still in a bind. If you could sign over a small part of the inheritance just to get us back on our feet, we'd pay you back as soon as we can. That was the moment I'd been waiting for. I made sure the recorder caught every word. I'll think about it, I told him, pretending to be hesitant. My mom chimed in. Mike, we just want what's best for you. We're a family. Families help each other. Hearing her say that almost made me snap, but I held it in. If anything, it made me more determined to get the truth out there. After they left, I listened to the recording with Lisa. She nodded, satisfied. We've got enough. They're trying to manipulate you into giving up your money. We spent hours going through everything I had recorded, making sure we had a solid case. It was hard to accept that my own mom, the person who was supposed to care about me, was just using me. But I knew I couldn't let them win. I'd worked too hard to get to where I was, and I wasn't about to let anyone take that away. That night, I felt a weird sense of relief. It was like I finally had some control over the situation. I knew what I had to do, and this time, I was going to make sure they didn't get away with it. No more playing along. I was going to fight back. So here we are. After all the sneaking around and recording, I finally had the evidence I needed. My mom and Jack had been trying to scam me out of my inheritance, and now it was time to confront them. But I knew I couldn't just run up to them yelling about what I knew. I needed to be smart about it, make sure they couldn't worm their way out. The first thing I did was talk to Lisa. She'd been my rock through all of this, and I trusted her more than anyone. We sat down and went through everything I had, recordings, notes, everything. We need a plan, she said, her eyes serious. You can't just show them what you've got. They might try to twist things, or worse, destroy evidence. She was right. If they caught wind of what I was doing too early, they could ruin everything. So we came up with a plan to catch them red-handed. I had to make them think I was ready to hand over the money. I know it sounds risky, but it was the only way to get them to admit everything directly. We needed something they couldn't deny later on. I called my mom that evening. Hey, I've been thinking about what you and Jack said, I told her, trying to sound unsure. Maybe we could meet and talk more about it. I could practically hear her relief over the phone. Oh, Mike, that's great. Let's meet tomorrow for dinner, okay? We can talk through everything. Perfect. That was exactly what I wanted, an opportunity to get them both in one place. I made sure everything was set up, and I even asked Lisa to hang back at the restaurant as backup, just in case things went south. She agreed, saying, We've got this, Mike. Don't worry. The next evening, I showed up to the restaurant with my phone ready, the recorder tucked in my pocket like before. I found my mom and Jack sitting at a table, all smiles, like they hadn't just spent the past few months trying to scam me. Hey, bud, Jack said, giving me that fake friendly grin of his. I forced a smile back and sat down, trying to look as relaxed as possible. We went through small talk for a while, how school was going, what my plans were after graduation. I played along, but every time Jack steered the conversation back to money, I nodded, acting like I was really thinking it over. I know you two have been trying to help, I said, pretending to hesitate, and I appreciate it. Maybe you're right. I could use some guidance. Jack's eyes lit up like he'd just won the lottery. Well, we're just here for you, Mike. We want to make sure you're taken care of, he said. My mom was nodding like her life depended on it. We're a family, and families support each other, she added, trying to sound genuine. I let them keep talking, and soon enough, Jack started going on about how I should transfer part of the inheritance into an account he'd set up for my benefit. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face neutral. Okay, I'm open to that, I said. But I want to make sure everything's done legally. I was thinking we could meet with a lawyer to make sure it's all above board. Jack's face twitched for just a second, and I knew I'd hit a nerve. He tried to cover it up, smiling again. Of course. We want to make sure you're protected, after all. But my mom looked nervous, like she was scared of what might come next. I pushed a little more. I actually have a lawyer friend who said they could come by right now. Is that okay? I asked, trying to act casual. The truth was, I had already set everything up. Lisa's dad was a lawyer, and he had agreed to come help me with this. I wanted witnesses, people who could back me up if things got ugly. Jack's smile wavered, and my mom's eyes went wide. Mike, honey, there's no need for that, she said, her voice shaky. We trust each other, don't we? That's when I knew they were panicking. They hadn't expected me to get a lawyer involved. Yeah, but I just want to make sure everything's clear, I said, keeping my tone friendly. It's a big decision, right? I could see them both starting to sweat. Jack opened his mouth to say something, but before he could, Lisa's dad walked in, wearing a professional look that screamed, no nonsense. Hi, I'm Mr. Collins, Mike's legal representative, he said, sitting down next to me. I understand there's some discussion about transferring assets. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Jack tried to play it off. Oh, we were just talking about some ideas. Nothing serious. But I wasn't about to let them backpedal. Actually, Jack, you were saying earlier that you needed the money to help with some debts, right? He shot me this look like he wanted to strangle me right there, but with Lisa's dad sitting next to me, he had no choice but to keep up the act. Well, yes, just some temporary assistance, he mumbled, clearly annoyed. Is that so? Mr. Collins said, raising an eyebrow. Because if you're asking Mike to transfer any part of his inheritance, it needs to be documented properly, otherwise it could be considered financial manipulation. My mom looked like she was about to cry. Mike, we just want what's best for you. We wouldn't do anything to hurt you, she insisted. But the act was up. I could see it on their faces. They knew they'd lost. That's when I pulled out my phone, playing the recordings I had collected over the past few weeks. My mom and Jack's voices filled the room, their words clear as day. Jack's face went pale, and my mom's hands started shaking. We were hoping you could sign over your inheritance, Jack's voice said from the recording. We're in a bind. Jack tried to reach over the table like he was going to grab my phone, but Lisa's dad stopped him. I wouldn't do that if I were you, he said calmly. It's all being recorded. My mom broke down then. She started crying, saying she was sorry, that she never meant for things to go this far. But I just stared at her, feeling empty. You didn't mean for this to happen? You were planning this the whole time, I said, my voice steady. I trusted you, and you tried to use me. Jack wasn't as emotional. He leaned back in his chair, his face stone cold. Fine, you got us, but let's not act like you're some innocent kid. You've been living off your dad's money for years, and we're just trying to get our share. Hearing that felt like a punch to the gut, but it also made everything clear. This wasn't about family. It was about greed, plain and simple. Get out, I said, pointing to the door. Both of you. I'm done. They left, my mom still crying, Jack muttering under his breath. When they were gone, I felt this weird mix of relief and sadness. Lisa's dad put a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, Mike, he said. Lisa, who'd been waiting just outside, came in and gave me a hug. I'm proud of you. You stood up for yourself. I nodded, but the truth was, I felt a bit broken. I'd wanted a family, and now I had none. But as I looked at Lisa and her dad, I realized I still had people who cared about me, people who had my back. Maybe it wasn't the ending I hoped for, but at least it was real. And sometimes, that's all you can ask for.